Hello everyone and welcome back to another Moxtober daily recap. For those of you who don't know, Moxtober is an annual event where for each day of the month of October, there's a different one-word prompt, and based on that prompt, people make different creative endeavors related to the game of Magic the Gathering. Most people design custom cards, which is what we review in these recaps, but people also draw art, write articles, and make deck lists. Anything creative, really. You can find the designer credits for all the cards we talk about today in the description, as well as the full files that we draw the small sample of cards from, and instructions on how you can submit your own cards to be in those files and potentially be featured on future episodes of this recap. With that being said, today's word is bifurcate, and my guests today are Mark Confidant and Bradley Rose. With that, let's get to our first card. Let's go to Gruesome Bisection from the MSC file. So this is 2 blue instant, exile target creature you control. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. When it does, create a token that's a copy of that creature. I like this a lot just because I feel like the Phyrexia flavor is on point. I love the idea of something that is a clone but also a flicker. It feels like very simple space and something that it essentially does like a very similar thing that you would normally get out of a clone, which is you get the ETBs plus another creature, but here you also get to like double the ETBs. It just feels like a very functional, very powerful card. I think it's hard to make, or maybe not hard to make, but I feel like often rares are very like splashy rather than straightforward and functional. And this one is like very functional, but in an exciting way. So shout out to Mako for its design, and I believe, given the set code and flavor of this is from Dawn on New Phyrexia, which is their New Phyrexia fan set.
I like that this gives me the feeling of the Hydra effect, where you're like, aha, a removal spell is about to hit my creature, but wait, you've accidentally made it worse, and it split it into two. So that's a very clever flavor match here.
Do you think that it should read your control instead of its owner's control for the option of upgrading a temporary steal into a permanent one? That seems kind of Phyrexian.
I
That's
mean,
funny
yeah.
to be like the only way that we can retain control of this person if we break their mind and that into two, and now they can't think about returning to their former alliance.
Yeah, I think that feels like a very subtle change and a very easy to make change. It'll just lead to splashy like blowout moments, but it is probably hard to set up because unless you have some really cheap active treasons, the going rate will be 7 mana to do that.
Yeah, it's more likely to show up in limited if this effect is used there than in constructed, as far as like likelihood of it occurring. I just like the edge case optimizing for mean-heartedness if it's a Phyrexian spell.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
for Phyrexian mechanical trait, asshole. Hmm.
I can neither confirm nor deny that statement.
Okay. Um, Mark, what is your first card going to be?
See here. I think I'm going to go with a card from mtg.design. It's a little bit of a complicated one, but Bisect. It's 1 blue for an instant. Choose target spell. If white was spent to cast the spell, copy that spell if it's an artifact or enchantment. If red was spent to cast it, copy if it's an instant or sorcery. And if green was spent to cast the spell, copy that spell if it's a creature spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So obviously, like this is pretty hard to parse because it's doing this whole like you could go with this or you could go with that sort of thing. There's a lot of not pronouns. What's the word for like? Is that an article? Is this or
There's a
that
lot
an
of
article?
there's a lot of modes to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of modes, but like this spell or that spell is used a lot in the text of this, and
Oh,
like,
pronouns.
well, it's not pronouns though, because this or that isn't a pronoun. I think it's like an
It's like an
article or
article, so like
something.
it's like referring to something.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but like it's hard to grok. But I enjoy this I do think it was a slight misstep to make this cost one blue blue instead of two and a blue, because two and a blue like immediately tees you up for this sort of like, oh, I can like double fork an artifact creature or something.
Huh. I think that could be maybe a matter of preference, but that does sound very exciting to go and do the enchantment creatures or artifact creatures. Um, I I like that they chose here choose target spell instead of a spell you control. I think that's important here for making it feel like the other modes will matter because when you're deck building, you may find the most optimal or preferred route for your deck. And it may be that you only want to copy creature spells, and it will always be the same thing every time. But when your opponent introduces different variables, you may go, "Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll have my mana base be able to let me copy that really powerful enchantment." I think that's a good way to go, and I love that this is so elegant to design now that we can copy permanent spells. So that's a cool space to explore.
Yeah, I'm like 99% sure this was inspired by that card that we had yesterday. Um, or if it wasn't, it was a really cool case of parallel design. The one which was like one black black destroy target creature, and then it had extra destruction based on what colors you spent for it. Um, and yeah, and like that card, I like the idea of like you have a blue dense environment, and then people pick this up based on what archetype or what cards they're mostly working with. So, this sort of like pick your own multicolored or like tribrid in this case, I think can do some funky stuff in that kind of environment.
Do wish there was a black case, although I get that it's probably impossible to fit on the line and have this be able to read without a magnifying glass.
I think you could probably do like um, they like choose target spell. Um, if you spent the following type of mana to cast it, and it's also a spell of the indicated type, copy it, and then you just have white artifact or enchantment, the red instant or sorcery, green creature, black I don't know planeswalker, and then just go with that.
This is a weird typesetting thing that I've always kind of wished was a thing, but for stuff like that, I wish that they had like a bullet point system, but the bullet points were the mana symbols.
Ah, yeah,
That
yeah.
actually sounds incredibly hype. That sounds like something we should like throw at Cajun and be like, hey, can you do this? Next mainframe update. Um,
For Magic Set Editor, yeah.
yeah, okay. Bradley, what is your first card going to be?
Okay, let's go on back to MSC, and this one is the Splitsoul Comet. All right. So this one's wild, of course, but I think it's got all. Unless I missed something, I think it's got all the dangers hammered out here. So it won't infinitely copy because it cares about cast from hand. So the next copy will see that it was spliced as well, but it wasn't cast from hand. So great. So you get to split a spell in two, and I like that you have the its own splice on case because it works both ways. If you have uh, the glacial ray and you splice onto this, you just have 4 damage and 4 damage. Although, oh, that's pretty spicy, yeah. Um, uh, but if you can do it the other way around, it'll still work that way. If you splice onto your favorite large sorcery or something, you can split that up as well.
I really love adding additional text beyond just more spell-like effects onto a spell when you splice. So adding like triggered abilities like this is a really sweet way to do that. Um, there's a lot of weird mechanical stuff when it comes to splicing. Like it's not immediately grokkable to me all the time that this is capable of splicing the copying onto another spell if this is the splice instead of the splice e. Um, like even there just terminologically it's kind of hard describe Splice stuff, even though I think Splice, like, pretty explicitly does very sweet things.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't fully understand how this card works, but it's sweet. So shout out to Elry for it. I think so. Wait, so
Yeah.
when you splice this onto something, so it's basically like a repeatable fork, and so the and when it's spliced onto something, you get to it like its own effects are copied, essentially. So it's basically like once you hit 7 mana, every instant or sorcery becomes deal 2 damage to any target, draw a card plus whatever effect it has, and then you get to
Well,
copy it.
so there's the thing where in order to splice it, you need to cast the spell and splice it. So, like, if you had 8 mana, you could splice onto a lightning bolt and have like
Right,
10
right.
damage and draw 2 cards. But obviously, that's like a gajillion mana. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I
just that
feel
like
like
it's just it just feels like the first clause just feels like it felt weird to me, but now I guess I kind of get it. Where it's like it's both like a reward for like hey splice stuff onto me, and also like if you splice this onto once you get the ability to start splicing this onto stuff, it's just you just run away with the game. So I actually the more now that I understand this, it seems like a really cool signpost or like draw for like a splice archetype.
it does seem to rate limit the amount that you can do 1 and 2 mana splices, though, because this thing, when it gets forked, is 4 day. It's like 2 electrolyzes when this thing gets copied.
Yeah. Plus whatever it is you're forking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of like mutate confusion, that complexity where it's like, what happens when I mutate my commander? Then my commander goes back to the command zone. It's like, well, your other cards actually go back to the command zone too. You just can't cast them from there, but they stay stuck there in oblivion. But yeah, this would be the same thing like that. Um, the lightning bolt inherits when you cast a spell from your hand if it was spliced onto you. Yeah, and then yeah,
Okay. Um, so let's go to my next card, which is going to be Unscrupulous Mentor from the MSC file. Um, so this is actually, it's mainly to highlight the mechanic here, which is one that is used on multiple people's submissions today. And it's, and that's because it in a happy coincidence, is the same as the prompt for today. It's Bifurcate. So Unscrupulous Mentor is very simple. When it enters the battlefield, you may bifurcate target creature you control with mana value 2 or less. And what that means is, if it isn't a token, you sacrifice it and create 2 tap tokens that are copies of it, except each is a homunculus. So Bifurcate is a mechanic from a set that the designer of this card, Reuben, is making called Brimst. It's an alchemy-based set that has gone through a few revisions. It was actually originally being designed by a user called Pinkmoth, who then kind of like this fell off of the set, and Reuben has like picked it up since. But yeah, Bifurcate has been a mechanic in it for I think probably about a year at this point as it's been going through development. So Reuben submitted this card. A few other people have submitted either by other Bifurcate cards. So depending on if you guys decide to bring those up, we might see some others. But yeah, this is kind of the original progenitor of it.
yeah. I remember seeing this. It's wonderful to see it again. It's a very fun mechanic.
It reminds me a little bit of Populate, but like less hoopy than Populate is, because Populate's very A plus B. Where this, like, the only demand that it makes of you is that you have an object that can be bifurcated by whatever thing you're bifurcating with. And that's not a huge threshold, especially because there are some things that bifurcate themselves.
Yeah, usually, in fact, I feel like Bifurcate is Bifurcate this. Um, so this is kind of, I guess, interesting variation on that. Um, yeah, and I like the idea of like having like because mentor is obviously like if there's a creature with lesser power, put a plus one plus one counter on it, um, and I like this is taking the same concept of like um, caring about smaller creatures, but without having to necessarily use that mechanic. Because I feel like also like yesterday's prompt was DK, so we had like a lot of DK designs. Um, and I liked the idea of like having cards that have a prior flavor that was hit on with the mechanic, but then not necessarily having to like adhere to the exact mechanical thing that that card does. Because I feel like a lot of people now they're like, if you see a card that like references food or drink in any way, they're like, why doesn't this create a food token? Even if that's like so far off from the design intent. So I think showing that like capturing the feel of what that flavor concept is about is more important than like using the exact specific mechanical implementation. That's been a thing that's been done in the past. Also, I think I love that the flavor text is a groan-worthy pun. His teaching methods are divisive.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Hmm. Reminds me of there's like several reminders here. They get to arrive at this, but homunculus reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist, which relates to the set of brimstone with alchemy potions, and then it relates to the unethical moment of combining two beings into one. And there you go. Now you've been reminded of it. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah,
All
for
right.
sure.
All right.
And
Cool.
now
Let's
that
move on.
now that we have a now that we've had that grim reminder, Mark, what is your next card?
Um, my next card is from the mtg.design file. It's Brushweed Elemental. It's 3 green, green, green for a 6/6 trampler. And when it dies, you create 2/3/3 green elemental creature tokens. Um, it's listed as common. I'm not sure that this would be a common or an uncommon in actuality. I just think it's a very simple mechanical implementation of it. And honestly, the sort of thing that could slot into the Moxtober cube very easily. Probably at uncommon, maybe at
Yeah,
rare if you're like
yeah,
pushing it.
probably uncommon. Like common probably doesn't fly because we have like Dreadmaw uh, at like this exact cost again and again as like the rate for like 6/6 trample for 6. So like I don't think adding an extra green pip justifies like this big of an upside at common. But yeah, it's a cool simple design and like um yeah, I just wish we had like more stuff like this, especially given how much like I feel like the Wormcoil engine is like such a like influential or popular card in Cube, and just having like other stuff where it's like, yeah, this will split into two smaller things. It's such an evocative flavor thing that also gives you a lot of value.
I like that. So weeds. It's hard to get rid of weeds when you're got a garden or lawn or something like that. In that when you try to get rid of them, that they may still be around, but they're just still like growing and they're still small. So this feels like in the midst of a battle, it's still taking time for these two baby brushweed elementals to grow into a 6/6 with trample again. They're just the smaller versions you're seeing right now, like a teenage Groot in this episode.
One thing I kind of wish was the case for some token producing things on death is just things that produce like smaller tokens. This is kind of tangential to Brushroot Elemental, but like, like a 6/6 that dies and makes two twos or something like that is a totally fine rate. And it's like, I guess a little bit unappealing to a person reading it because they're like, oh, you just get back something smaller on the back end, which is a little bit disappointing. Where like this thing being spread out across two bodies still feels like functionally similar. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that Wormcoil being so intensely appealing probably means people should try and like ape that sort of design a little bit more.
Okay. Next up, Bradley. What is your next design going to be?
Alrighty, let's go to stay here in mtg.design. Kyrea, the Flame Witch. Okay, so here we have a commander, another Enchantment Matters commander. We saw one in Commander Legends, where that helps you with the inherent drawback of playing with auras. If you're playing with auras, that commander would return from the graveyard. In this case, again, with the copy permanent technology, lets you be able to stay at pace with casting aura spells that have a drawback, especially if you're buffing your own creatures. You can get 2 for 1. In this case, you get upgraded to 1 for 1 if you spread it across two creatures. So that's, I think, it's a very simple, elegant way to tackle the bifurcate theme with what the gameplay pattern of auras.
I like that this is an Enchantress card where I wouldn't feel silly playing like pacifism effects in it. I would be just like totally fine to pacifism the two scariest things on the field.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that I wish pacifism effects were more like present or playable in like constructed environments because I think that it creates like a unique dynamic for the removal to have. Um, yeah, for the card as a whole, I'm like I'm torn because I really like the idea of making auras matter more. Um, my worry is that this kind of will not like while there are interesting ways you can build it, I wish there was a way to like incentivize this where it doesn't just become Voltron. Um, and I also think that like copying a spell that you care about or like drawing a card when you cast a spell that you care about is kind of the most like milk toast way to make a commander for something that's for like a specific card type. I kind of wonder if like making this whenever you cast an aura spell, um, like you can like copy it for each creature you control or something. So you can do like some crazy stuff with like auras that it's kind of like a the aura version of Zada Hedron Grinder. So, except like there you get like permanent buffs. Though maybe too similar to Zada, but I'm just like I'm spitballing for like ideas that like differ from the usual way that auras are used in Commander, which is like very Voltron-y, and but can still like give you value in a meaningful way.
Oh, that's a great point. I wasn't even thinking about stacking up. I was like, oh, I just want to spread around among multiple targets. I think maybe it would be cool if it said if you copy it, right, or you may copy it. If you do, you have to choose a different target than the original. Then that can maybe create some more dynamic gameplay. The one with like you suggested with all creatures you control maybe doesn't. It, it's maybe weird with pacifism because maybe you make like 5 tokens like saprolings, and now you have like 5 pacifisms, but to put on other creatures. But it would be cool to if you're always forced to do another target for the copy.
What about making it so both the aura and the copy had to target something unenchanted? So, like, whenever you cast an aura spell targeting an unenchanted creature, copy it. You may uh, choose another unenchanted target for the copy.
Ooh, unenchanted. Look at that
Oh,
tech.
that feels pretty hype. Yeah, and it's like now you have like this real like question of like I don't want to like run out of creatures to enchant, so how are we going to make this work here?
I
Which you can
imagine
like
you end up playing like a lot of cartouche stuff or bestow creatures or things.
yeah, for sure. And I could also see
Just
just
re- I just realized this also provides another option for curse commanders. I know we have the one that just specifically spells out curse in Grixis colors, and now we can go, hey, let's do Mardu and spread around all the curses among opponents.
oh
Oh, hey,
yeah.
this player's not enchanted yet.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah, or maybe because like I do worry about like this feeling of like running out of targets, and I'm not sure how to like resolve that. Um, maybe
Mm.
it's like whenever you cast an aura spell, you may sacrifice you may sacrifice an aura attached to that target if you do copy it. I don't know. There's like lots of like little knobs, and I'm not sure that I'm entirely happy with any of the ones I'm suggesting. And I think that the unenchanted thing gets the closest. But yeah, I think that probably need to play with it a little bit more and figure out like, because bringing up the curses thing was like made me think like, damn, okay, curses are the one thing where they're like you can't increase the number of players, right? So like that's like a object limit there. So I was thinking of like how can we
Mm,
potentially mitigate that?
yeah. But also a cool like extension of how many targets you can target, because that's a good point, Caillou, about running out of targets. But at least with enchant players, you go, okay, at least I'll sprinkle in a few curses in this deck because I know I can at least enchant some of players if they start running out of creatures for me, or other permanents for me to enchant.
Yeah, I feel like the interaction of curses being kind of like I don't know, anti-linear with this isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. You just like limit yourself to being like, okay, well, I have three opponents, so like I probably play like, two or three curses because I figure I'll see like one throughout the fullness of the game, unless it goes real long.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so shout out to Dragon of the West for this design. And also, shout out to the Dragon of the West for the flavor text of the next card I'm going to be showing off, which is Crossroads of Destiny in the MSC file. Um, Here we have a little reference to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Very happy since we were just talking about this last episode. Great show, everyone should watch. And now I get an actual chance to reference the real Dragon of the West, Iroh. So this is made by MBTree. Submitted a bunch of cards before. We've talked about their designs on prior episodes. This is, I believe, a card because I know that they're working on a set called Legends of the Four Nations, which is an entirely Avatar-based set. And as you can see from the art, this is and flavor text, this certainly is inspired by that. You can deal 2 damage to each non-red creature, or deal 6 damage to target red creature. So kind of giving that idea of like modality is definitely like a pretty like good mechanical beat to hit for like which direction do you want to go, and like this feels like a very functional way of like representing that choice point.
Yeah, the redness reminds me of, okay, Fire Nation-y, red, that's cool, and then making like choices with your family or not. That's all very awesome, and I like that for the red part, it sticks to a single creature because if you're they might be playing a dragon that you're facing against, and Shivan dragon, you're like, okay, I'll kill it. And whereas the other case wouldn't normally get rid of dragons, um, if you had swapped it around.
I really enjoy the number of different ways that people went with Bifurcate. I didn't realize initially that the word was going to be as rich as this, because like this is I guess like a charm card I could have seen being like that, but it's also like story wise, it's a choice between like a fork in the trail. And we also had a literal like fork effect come up previously. We've had copying as a way to bifurcate, and I think we're also probably going to run into a couple of different ways of like splitting a creature into tokens as bifurcate, as well as things like split cards. And like I didn't realize just how rich a word this was going to be just on its face.
Yeah, same. It felt like something where I was like, oh yeah, you copy stuff, and then you get to the idea of like, wait, no, there's actually so many like choice points and like copying is just like it's so deep, and it's like choice points are just like the foundation of magic as a whole, or like good play patterns in magic. So like even though it's like a very simple concept, that simplicity lends itself to depth, and that's something I didn't like appreciate until people started like rolling the designs in. Yeah, like for this specific design, I'm usually not a fan of like color hate. I think that it linearizes sideboard building and like is usually like it's not like a meaningful way to actually like create tension or create like counterplay. In this case, I think that it's like a flavor resonance, and I believe that there's like colors play an important part in the context of Legends of the Four Nations. So there's like something more going on there behind the scenes, as far as I know. Unfortunately, Legends of the Four Nations is one of the sets that I haven't paid as much attention to. I'm usually more like attentive to sets that like are like for original settings. But this definitely is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I should. It's been a while since I looked in at the set channel. I should give it a holler. Okay, Mark, what is your next card going to be?
Well, since that one was about Zuko choosing which side of his family he cared about in a way, um, let's talk about a different way a family can be kind of splitting up. Irreconcilable Differences is white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each player who controls more than one commander chooses and exiles the rest. Players can't cast a commander if they control a commander. So I like this on its face as like partner hate because partner is one of the more pushed elements of Commander on the whole. But I also like that there's a secret mode to this in that it's a way to respond to mind control effects rather than just like trying to naturalize the mind control. Or God forbid, if someone has a mind control that's just like permanent but not tied to a permanent, um, this makes them choose to either say goodbye to their own commander permanently or give you back what you had. Um, and it sticks around on the battlefield, allowing you to kind of keep that situation going on.
Oh my gosh, I totally missed the gaining control of another person's commander. Oh, that's awesome. That's a great answer because sometimes you're just like helpless and you're like, I don't know what to do um, about this. So, especially if it's a blue like sorcery, like switcheroo that just like switches the control and it's not an aura you can like disenchant in white. So this gives another answer for that. Besides the partner thing, I think it's so cool to go and care about partners this way as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. But like it feels like very narrow, so I wonder like how often this will actually be played slash come up. So I wonder if there's like a way to do this that broadens the effect in a way that still retains like the usage intent and flavor behind it. But as for the current use case, yeah, it's it's flavorful. It has a very like powerful like silver bullet feel to it, where it can be useful in specific situations. Um, in fact, like I think probably the biggest place to probably see it play is like uh, mid level Zur the Enchanter decks, where you can just like tutor it up, um, or like any deck which has like good like toolbox ways to like toolbox package. The value of this goes up a lot. Obviously, like if you're playing Zur at like a even a slightly higher level, there are a lot of combo packages to do. But in like a more casual setting, this is a really strong card to make sure that everyone is like able to have fun and use the tools that they brought to the table.
That's a
Maybe it
good
should
point.
be
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mark.
maybe it should be on a bear. That way, that person who inevitably plays like a billion hate bears in Commander can have an effect. Like a fantasy divorce lawyer or something.
I could see it. And
Fantasy
creatures are
divorce lawyer.
obviously usually more tutorable than enchantments, but yeah, I'm not sure that actually
Yeah.
like fixes the use case issue, but it might make it more of a silver bullet in or like a silver bullet in more cases.
Yeah. If I were to try to leave it as is, if this was like you can't change anything here, then I might go, okay, I'll make a Commander Legends environment where there's partners again, but that doesn't guarantee everyone will play with partners. So I'll also include lots of creature stealing effects, and then maybe this will trigger.
Okay, what is your next card going to be, Brad?
Okie dokie, let's go to MSE. Contagious Blight is the name of this next. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Is it listed? Oh, yeah, it's listed as designed by RomanExperience. Cool. All right. So I think this is similar to natural phenomena of like the Brushweed Elemental has deals with weeds, and weeds can go and get out of control. In this case, plagues can get out of control here. Um, I think this is a really great way of like seeing how you can spread around uh, poisony or disease from person to person. And he can even like get even worse if the two poison like go and trade blows again afterwards. So Yeah, I think that's a great execution of that concept.
Yeah, don't have much to say here for me. It's just like it has a flavor concept, it hits on it, um, and it's like I wonder if like maybe like no, I don't know. I was thinking about like maybe just having this key off of like power or something, but I don't know like how actually meaningful that is. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know.
Yes. So let's see how it goes, right? Let's see. You enchant their creature. It's a 2/2. It goes down. It's a bear. It goes down to a 1/1. And now you've maybe also made it worse for yourself, I guess. So if they block your creature, uh, then they cough a contagious blight onto your creature, and now you have a blight that you can then spread back to them. Hmm.
It's strange because it happens after combat, it functionally doesn't reduce the power of the creature the first time, or at least not for hitting creatures. Um, because you can like infect something with contagious blight, and then that creature will hit in. The contagious blight will copy onto whatever blocks it, and it will do like an extra point of their toughness will be reduced. So if you block a 2/2 that has become a 1/1 with contagious blight with your 2/2 will die of the blight at the same time as theirs will die of combat damage. So I think what you really want is if you like cast contagious blight on one of their things, you want like an O5 wall or something. You really want to be in the business of like just like bouncing against their guy because they aren't going to swing in if it'll just bounce because then you have like an O4 wall that if they send anything into the red zone, it's going to get contagious blight.
Mm.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
definitely feels like
maybe
something that
that's.
needs like development tweaks.
Yeah, I feel like it should create a copy of itself attached to the creature as well. So like when it
Yeah.
attacks, um, that gets like a little type line, like a little liney in the text. Um, hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe also you can also have it so that even if the creature just sticks around not attacking or blocking, that it'll spread it to the other creatures on the same team. Uh, that could be a cool like thing to make sure that um, accelerates this into an end that actually matters as well.
It's weird though because you also want like a sub game to be going on where it's like, okay, what can I do to control what creatures are left after this thing runs its course? I'm not sure what the ideal sub game looks like.
Mm.
Yeah, I wonder if like maybe something instead of like this, you do like a pestilence variant where it like creates a like it's like a pestilence, but then you can like pay to create an enchantment token and put it on each creature, and then when there are no creatures left, you sacrifice it. So like basically like a pestilence variant. Because I think that like, well, there is this like, or and I don't know, like you want to keep the flavor of creatures passing into each other, but like it feels difficult to reconcile that. I don't know. But yeah, okay. Enough ink spilled on this. The overall takeaway is the flavor concept and uh, idea of how to mechanically represent that is cool. It probably requires development tweaking to make sure the play pattern actually reflects one that encourages the intended effect of this card to occur. Um, my next card is going to be Challenging Fate. So, designed by Jayhew. Um, revealed. Okay, so I'm a sucker for fact or fiction type effects. Custom designers are also generally suckers for this types of effects. So I've played with a bunch of different custom variants over the years. They're a lot of fun. Um, Reveal the top 7 cards of your library, which is cool because this also has a CMC 7. Choose an opponent. The chosen opponent separates those 2 cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Challenging Fate deals damage to the chosen opponent equal to the number of cards put into your graveyard this way. So there is like this cool mini game where it's like, oh, damn it, I really do want to actually be able to like roll them this turn. Or like I want them to like not have a lot of cards. Um, but then like if I do an equal split, I could just get like I almost want this to instead of number of cards put into your graveyard this way, I wanted to do like total CMC. Especially because you're already playing Challenging Fate, that can like you're like, oh god damn it, like they've rolled into another like it could go crazy, but I think as a 7 drop, you're kind of okay. It's kind of okay to like go ham, I suppose. Yeah,
I
I'm
definitely agree with total mana value. Yeah.
yeah, but other than that, like I think this is a really good way of like kind of like giving them a choice that isn't really a choice in a very interesting which feels like a very red thing, you know what I mean? So it really justifies tacking the red on there. um and yeah, I like the idea of this as just like, yep, my win con is drawing cards and then just playing a bunch of challenging fates. And what are they going to do? I'm just going to draw into more challenging fates, or I just burn them the heck out. Which like I feel like lots of like counter burn or like burn control strategies are usually smaller, which makes sense because that's just usually how tempo works. Like tempo decks are like you naturally are playing cards that like run out of value quicker because that's how burn spells usually go. But I like the idea of something that's just like big mana, but still burn you out. Like big red style deck, but instead of like big blue red.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially with the instant part. That helps support. You have to like, okay, they didn't cast anything I wanted to counter, so I'll still at least refuel all my little counter burn spells with this thing, and helps continue push the strategy of burning them over time.
One thing that's like slightly difficult about factor fictions on the whole is because it gives you like if your opponent plays a factor fiction, it gives you this whole big job that you don't necessarily know what the right answer is to, and then it will feel like things are spiraling out of your control just because it's a strong card, but then also because you're trying to make a decision based on hidden information, you'll be a little bit like punished for this like agonizing choice that you had to make, if that makes sense. Um like agonizing and complicated. I don't mind because I think that like the play of factor fiction is like really interesting for more enfranchised players. Um, I do think that like tacking on the like mana value thing adds an extra layer of complexity for like your opponent trying to split the piles, where they're like, okay, I need to. Am I playing the game for mana value? Am I playing the game for trying to give my opponent more difficult pile choices? Like, what are my goals here? Becomes even more complicated. That's not necessarily bad just because like factor fiction is sweet and it's iconic in Magic because people like playing factor fiction and they like giving their opponent that hard choice. Um, I wonder about net fun though. Like, is it just that factor fiction is like taking fun from your opponent?
Dude, mana value was a great pick. Like, I can you imagine if Emrakul is in one is among the seven? You're like, okay, I put Emrakul in all the lands in this one, and then the rest in the other pile, so I don't take 13 plus more damage. Or yeah, 13 is the one that's legal in Commander. Yeah,
It's really sweet with MDFC lands because you can just like have one of those crazy 7 drop lands and it's occupying a land slot, so you don't even have to add more expensive stuff.
Okay, Mark, what is your next card going to be?
Let's see here. Um, let's go with one that has kind of a terrible pun to it, but I enjoy quite a bit. In the MSE file, Enraging River. It's 1 red and a red for an enchantment. It says each player must attack each of their opponents with at least one creature each combat, if able. So, for people not in the know, Raging River is a card from Alpha that like basically split the table into 2 halves, and you had to have your creatures on either side of the river, and creatures could only attack or block things on one side of the river. So this doesn't quite do the same thing, because it was kind of like a pain to implement that as far as stuff goes. But the idea that you have to attack an opponent with like at least one creature if possible, um, kind of creates this sort of like I'm forced to split the party situation in the same way that Raging River did. And I really enjoy the somewhat bad pun.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not I'm not sure if the templating needs to be iterated, but we get it, which is great. I'm a fan of this kind of stuff. I know Red has some enchantments that like, oh, you have to always attack each turn Fable, things like that. This is a very creative way of doing the same thing.
Yeah, like as soon as I saw this, I was like, "Oh my god!" It's a reference to that one crazy old card that like splits your stuff up. Um, and yeah, like, and I didn't remember the exact rules text of it, so I was like, "Is how much of a good reference is this?" Because I'm like, my worry was, I was like, "This seems functional. That can't be right. If it was a reference to the original card, it wouldn't be as functional." Like, but yeah, like it just um I think that like if it's so compelling to someone like me who's only tangentially aware of Raging River, it's it's a good design. And like it feels like also like a very functional design where it's like, oh, I can't alpha strike this person. I gotta like it feels like a very melee esque card. It's like forcing your opponent. It's like a goad but for melee, in a weird way. Um, I almost wonder if that could be like um, an interesting thing where it's uh, like I don't know, like repeatedly having this type of effect on different cards. So your opponent, so that there's no like either picking on one person and it makes it hard for like one person to become the arch enemy. That could be like an interesting thing for a multiplayer set to explore. I have no idea, but yeah, I just like this concept is very cute and it feels like it has lots of mechanically intriguing stuff going on with it. So shout out to Astrid with the B for the design.
It's also a super novel way of doing the idea of splitting, which is like one of the sub themes that Bifurcate kind of enables.
Okay, next up, Bradley. What is your next card going to be?
Okay. Um, Something that's not more of an abstract splitting, a literal split. Let's tear the earth in two in the MSE file. This is listed as a blank in the file. All right. Uh, so red has sometimes these like, this is a big chaotic effect. Woo. Um, so this is just another one of those. However, I think it's clever to have. There's an exciting part. You can play the cards, which is in the red space, along with black and blue of stealing other people's cards to cast. But if without that part, you can actually lead to this feeling like it's not doing anything. Where if everyone exiles their like maybe all their excess lands or the permanents that are less repertoire of what's exiled. So I think that was a an excellent what do you call it, safety valve for making sure this actually is a mythic impactful spell.
How many cards does this quote unquote draw, do you think, when you play it down? Like the
At
in a
least
four
10.
player
Oh, and
yeah, in
four.
a four player multiplayer game, I think it excluding the ones that it gets rid of yours, I think it draws you like the 16 worst cards on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm. Though notably, you also, if those include tokens, that can up the number real fast, but decrease the number of stuff that you get real quick.
Yeah,
Um,
each token, what, like, is half a card reduced in the total exile pile?
Yeah, yeah. For every two saprolings, you get rid of one. So yeah, like protects you against this a little bit.
yeah,
You
this
probably get a
feels yeah,
ton of lands.
yeah. This was also on my list. Yeah, this card just feels real filthy. Like, and again, I like the idea of like it's mass land destruction, but also mass land destruction that immediately puts you in a winning position, and it doesn't destroy all of their lands if they have ways to mitigate it. So they can like still like play the game or like claw their way back into the game as long as they can like quickly deploy cards under whatever you're trying to do. But yeah, it usually just reads 8 mana, you win the game, which like fair play, fair play. In most formats other than Commander, 8 mana is like fine for winning the game, and like Commander is just kind of like if you're really playing if you're playing very casual Commander, I don't think that this is going to come out. And if you're playing like hyper fast Commander, this card is not super viable. So it's in this middle place where like it's people who want to do big dumb stuff but aren't like super casual to the point where they're like uh where like the idea of like losing resources in such a way is like, oh man, that sucks. And that's not to say that like that's a bad thing. I like obviously wanting to play the game is a entirely fair and reasonable thing, but it's just like it's a difference in like the vibe of your play group usually.
I feel like you want to play this like in something red green that gives you as many additional land drops as possible. Just because your opponents are going to scoop up all their mana base anyway. You play this like the turn after you got your 8th land, and then you have like Azusa and that one Dryad and a Summer Bloom or something like that. That way, you're getting as many lands redeveloped as quickly as possible.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
that
The point
I
about explore effects is very true.
oh, I didn't realize that like you would just exile all your lands. Well, okay, you know what? You're right. You wouldn't just exile all your lands, but you're incentivized to just I would just replay them. Oh, it's fine. So it doesn't feel like you lost anything. Um, if that was a concern, I can easily just say you may play opponent's cards or other players' card or whatever.
Okay, and with that, we're getting in on time, so this is going to be the last slot of the day. Um, so, Mark, I would you like to talk about your cards, or would you mind if I did? Because I think if you would like to talk about them, I have another last card, but I do like your cards for today very much.
You could do it if you want. Thank you.
Okay, so Mark's cards for today are two split quote unquote cards. We'll go with one first. Rock the Boat, um, where rock is one green, create a tapped mana rock token. It's an artifact with tap, add colorless, where and I'm pretty sure that the mana rock line is just kind of like there as filler. And then one blue boat. You create a skyboat token. It's a 3/3 vehicle with flying and crew 1. And you can congeal them by paying one blue green, create a token that has all traits of both instead. So it's essentially like uh, fuse, but specifically for things that create permanence, which sounds like it would restrict the design space a lot, but it the more you think about it, like as long as your format has like a lot of different token types you can throw into the blender, that's not necessarily the case. Especially if you're willing to mix and match the same type again and again, as is the case with, or the same cards up again and again, as is the case with rock and roll. Same front face, but the back half has a 1/1 construct food creature. It's a literal roll. um, and yeah, like the idea of like these are interesting cards in their own monocolors, um, but then if you get the multicolored, you can get maximum effect slash utility or value. I think I would want Rock to either make the artifact token tapped or like be a little bit more expensive, especially with the modality of this card. I think making an untapped mana rock could uh, not be too strong, but I think it might make the modality. It might incentivize people to like pick this solely for like this is just really good ramp, and then the feeling of like uh this card like the both halves being useful and wanting to congeal it for that could be like lost in there. So, but other than that, I'm a big fan of this set of designs.
Interesting if you have the artifact token, the mana rock be tapped, because then you have this kind of trade off where, like, if the other side is a creature, you might be disincentivized from congealing in situations where you know you're going to need to block with the creature. Or like if it's a food, knowing that you're going to need to activate the food this turn.
Yeah. Like I would want to maybe create an enchantment token that has exalted on it, and then the other is a creature, and maybe it's like, oh, I don't really need the it's like a 1/1 creature. I don't really need the creature right now, but I do want to exalted my like big demon that I want to attack with. Or if you have no creatures, you're like, oh, okay, I do want an exalted creature, please.
Um, there's a couple like kind of tension points with how I'd have to hash this out. One of the things that's nice about reminder text is that it doesn't have to be rules precise and it can vary between cards. Um, I was kind of uncertain on two cases for congeal that I didn't really hash out in my head. These were both just like the very base case proof of concept. The first is congealing when you have multiple tokens created is kind of tricky. So, like, if you had to raise the alarm that could congeal with something else, then you would have to have the reminder text for that. Say, um, create like a number of tokens or something like that. Um, I'm not really sure how you would hash that out. I think that the ideal case is to have it be that always when you're congealing, you choose the bigger number when it comes to number of tokens created, and you choose the bigger number when it comes to total power and toughness. But I'm not sure how to hash that out specifically in a reminder text, especially because the reminder text line on Fuse is a very, very narrow line.
Yeah, it's a tough problem for sure. Like I wanted to just go, hey, have one side make a 2/2 vigilance creature, knight or whatever, and the other one make something that has like flying and 1/1 flyer. So it would be cool to have a 2/2 flying vigilance, or is it a 3/3 flying vigilance if that's in the congeal rules? Yeah.
Okay, and I think with that we can go to Mark's cards, but not Mark's actual cards. The card that Mark wants to feature.
Let's see here. Okay, so this is my final one. That makes it difficult. I have to choose very precisely here. I think I'm gonna go with Mitosis from the MSE file. It's one, a green and a blue for an instant with destroy target non-ooze creature. Its controller creates two tokens that are copies of it, except they're 1/1 ooze creatures. So it's one of those like generous gift style. I'm gonna blow this thing up and give you something else by way of an apology. Um, but this one specifically, it's like very bad against utility creatures of your opponents. But also you can like duplicate your own utility creatures if you want to in response to removal, or if they have good ETBs that you want to kind of double blink, but like double blink and make your body horrendously worse.
Yeah, this is cool to use both offensively and defensively. Um, yeah, I mean, oozes are kind of ambiguous in how maybe some, yeah, it's a nice flavor match too of like your sometimes you want to do science on your own thing, blue, green, Simic, whatever, like the flavor text goes, but sometimes oozes are bad news.
Yeah, and like just the flexibility of this of like they have a big creature, you can knock it down a peg. If you have your own creature with a good ETB, it's like a double clone. It's flexible and terrifying. Yeah. Um, I think it's one of those things where like blue, the new color pie just came out and like blue doesn't get like Pongify effects anymore. So and green emphatically does not get creature removal in this form. So I feel like while it feels like a very Simic spell in flavor, I feel like mechanically might want a little bit of a shift there. Um, but the concept overall is something that I'm pretty enamored with. Yeah. Okay, and I guess with that we can move into our last card of the day. Bradley, what have you got for us?
Okay, let's go to mtg.design. This card is called Doubled Strike. Kinda. Uh, you give a creature double strike, but you have the damage that each strike does. And what's funny is that, in Silver Border World, you can do halves. So if you have 3 power, and you have it to 1.5 damage, and then 1.5 damage, and then draw a card. This alone on the usual use case would do not very much, or if anything at all. But if you get creative, like put this on your Virtus to do 0.5 damage and then 0.5 damage, you can have their life total twice, and other things like that. That upon dealing combat, I guess saboteur, yeah, any saboteur effects you get twice of. Yeah, so it's a very fun and funny card.
It's also a great combat trick for the first strike against low toughness creatures. You swing in with like your 2/4 into their 4/1, and then you double strike it and kill it in first strike damage in order to have your guy live. And it doesn't even cost a card, you get your card back.
Look at that tech.
Yeah, this is the kind of like silly silver border card that I love, where it's like it's entirely functional, but not really, kinda, and it makes for like one of those things where like it takes a second to grok, but then it's like yeah, okay, I get the joke, and then you just go to play with it. So yeah, I'm a fan, and again, like of all the things to double, uh, double strike is certainly the obvious choice, but but one that I don't think anyone would have thought of. Um, it would have been really funny if someone had been like target creature gains double strike. If it already has double strike, it gains quadruple strike or something like that. I could definitely have seen that as a design someone submitted today.
Yeah.
So
Some more.
quadruple strike. Would it be like it deals damage before the first strike damage, in the first strike damage, after in regular damage, and in last strike damage?
Yep, it's got them all covered. In fact, it
Oh,
has
very.
it has the thing. What was that turbo? So the four stages it deals damage in are first strike, regular damage, last strike, and then it has the turbocharged snail effect where it dealt damage to you already last turn.
See, I was thinking it was going to be the throat wolf firstest strike step.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about Throat Wolf.
Yep. Third. Yeah. First
So yeah,
is first
so we'll save the
regular.
turbocharged snail for quintuple strike when that arrives.
Yeah. Uh, oh, some other you mentioned like yeah, the double strike part, bifurcate, nice like tying in. Of course, that's what the impetus of this is. Other ones that are bifurcatey is preventing half. That's like yet another twosiness, but then also it's a red white hybrid. That's like they didn't have to do that. They could have done white or red, but they went with white/red, and that's another well done thing.
I just had a wild thought. Um, we didn't see any like doubling season style effects in this. I'm surprised that nobody went with doubling as their like bifurcate thing.
Yeah, I feel like most people were thinking of like splitting stuff rather than um like doublings. Like it's yeah, we saw a lot of doubling cards. Like I don't know. Yeah, maybe doubling season is just kind of passé these days.
We've reached like a post doubling season society.
Oh,
Society has evolved past the need for doubling season. Um, but here, here's what
quadrupling
I'm
season.
designing one for you real quick. Here we go. If you would create one or more tokens, create that many tokens plus a copy of those tokens, except it's a 1/1 or one
Yeah.
more creature tokens. So you get a little homunculus buddy alongside any other tokens you create, but it's the same type. So you get like
There you
little
go.
wolf homunculi, beast homunculi, dragon homunculi, and if your tokens actually have ETBs or relevant keywords, little buddy got them too. But yeah, and I think with that, that brings us to the end of the show. So thanks everyone for watching. Thanks to Mark and Bradley for coming on. As always, all of the designs, designer credit, uh, and full files that we pulled this sample of designs from are in the description, as well as instructions on how you can get your own cards submitted to those files and potentially considered for future days. But yeah, um, until next time, this is going to be Caillou signing off. Thanks for watching.